We're down, we're just south of Atlantic City.
I didn't know.
The next time
I have been to Atlantic City. Right here. I did go to Atlantic City
I
once.
can imagine.
No, twice. I've been to Atlantic City twice. Not much to.
Yeah,
Same
well,
here.
they're
I'm retired. I'm busy now.
trying to redevelop it, it's just, people gamble online now, Nobody wants to go to a high-end casino.
Oh, see, I'm not a big gambler. I always go in with my $300 and be like, okay, once it's gone, and then that's it.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for joining us for this month's Technical and Advisory Committee and Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. First on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment today? No public comment. We'll move on to the Executive Director's Report. Good morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see everyone this morning. I know our April TACCAC meeting was canceled due to a lack of agenda items, so it seems like it's been forever. Welcome to any new members that are with us here this morning. A couple items I want to bring to your attention. We have a new production company, Honest AV. They're in the back over here, and we are very excited to have them, very professional, and so we think that we're going to have a wonderful product. And just as a reminder, you can go to our YouTube page to watch these videos, and of course they're streamed live as well. The microphones, I think, can be a little sensitive, but they seem to be like right on at this point, and they're going to remain live throughout the meeting. So just keep that in mind as you're having some side conversations that you don't want everyone to hear, okay? Also, as a reminder, please make sure you are using the microphone, even though they pick up very well. If you have something to say, please ask someone to pass you the microphone, because we want to make sure that we get everything recorded. Next, we're excited to announce 2 new employees on the Space Coast TPO team. The first one is Madeline Calvert, and she will be overseeing. Madeline, you can stand up and let everyone see your face. We're really excited to have her. She will be overseeing our fiscal operations and grant management, working very closely with Jillian, keeping our financial systems running very smoothly. And before joining, she worked for the city of Altamont Springs. So she's hit the ground running, and we're just really excited to have her on the team. And then our next employee is Leah Nepo. She's our community engagement coordinator. And if you remember, Shelby left us, and so she replaces Shelby, and she brings a very unique perspective. She led impactful community programs at Serene Harbor before joining the TPO team. And so she has also hit the ground running. In fact, her and Abby and I were at the Grove Church in Titusville, working with an event this weekend, distributing safety materials, and it was a wonderful event. So welcome, Leah. Leah, did you stand up by chance? You have to stand up. You can't sit down. All right. So in your package, you will find the TPO Governing Board meeting minutes from April 10th. We did have a TPO board meeting, and really the purpose of that was a strategic plan workshop for our governing board. We wanted to solicit input and guidance from our members on key elements that's really going to help guide our transportation initiatives and our priorities. And the themes that really came out of that workshop was collaboration, public engagement, and funding. That was also a very big focus. And funding is not one of our strategic planning goals. And so this is, we have a lot of new members. I think we have 11 new governing board members. So this is they're going to bring a unique perspective. So we have more work to do. That was the initial workshop. And you can also go to our YouTube page, by the way, if you'd like to see that and see the discussions. And I think, Eric, you attended that meeting and you got to see it firsthand. So it was really good, really good. Another item that was discussed at that board meeting, and it came up as an action item, was the approval of $500,000 of TPO funds for the Cape Canaveral crosswalk and a pedestrian hybrid beacon just south of Taylor Ave on A1A. This improvement is going to be incorporated into an FDOT resurfacing project that's scheduled for construction in fiscal year '27. And DOT currently has that under design right now. And this has been a priority project for the city for a long time. In fact, last year it was adopted as a standalone project on our list of project priorities. The city of Cape Canaveral has wanted to, for many, many years, to make A1A more walkable, and they felt that this was important for their community. So the governing board unanimously approved the use of our funding for that project. And then the last item, we've had a very active legislative session. Unfortunately, the MPOAC is not monitoring and compiling all of the transportation-related legislation that we have been seeing. I have been doing my best to keep up with it and tuning in and listening to some of these committee meetings, but there's a lot going on. The legislative session has been extended to June 6th because the House and the Senate are trying to get the budgets aligned, but it seems that is only going to be focused on June 6th, related to the budget. So as the dust settles on all of this transportation-related legislation, we will compile that information and bring it back to you at the next meeting, because there's a lot in there. Some of it is a little concerning, but anyway, we will give you an update on that as we learn really what has happened at the end. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have two items today. The first one is the Technical and Citizen Advisory Committee meeting minutes for March 10th, 2025. The second item is approval of Work Order 25-19K, 2024 State of the System. And I'd look for a motion for approval. Have a motion from Steve and a second from Devin. Sorry, you were in there too.
We all did it.
And from the CAC, I need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion. Kohler?
Motion from Eric. We have a second from Harry. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
And from the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to presentations. We don't have any action items today, but we do have 4 presentations. And the first one is the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Financial Resources.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nick Lepp from HDR, here to present kind of an update on our long-range plan and also kind of going over some financial resources, just as a refresher before we get into the cost-feasible plan. The long-range plan kind of is appropriate for this agenda since we're going to be dealing with all 3 of these items. So the long-range plan is kind of the overarching document that helps feed into that list of priority projects that you're going to hear about, and then also that list of priority projects into the Transportation Improvement Program, which you will also hear about today. So that's where the long-range plan is an important document going into really the TPO's work of advancing these projects and receiving those federal funds. So just to let you know where we are today, right now we are at that cost feasible and financial resources stage. And here's where we're going to discuss kind of where we're seeing these financial resources as we're developing this 2050 long-range plan. As Georgiana talked about, the financial resources are a little bit different and less than they were when we developed the plan for the 2045 long-range plan. So some of the things that need to be in the long-range plan, it needs to include those federal, state, and also local revenues just for that complementary transportation planning component to make sure we know everything that's going on within the region over this 25-year horizon. It needs to be fiscally constrained, meaning we cannot spend more money than we have forecasted to have available. And that's just not only the 25-year period, we have to make sure that we are fiscally constrained within each 5-year block. And I'll demonstrate that a little bit further in the presentation. Another little update also is we used to hear everything called cost feasible as these projects were available or planned to be funded through 2045 in the last plan. But say if a phase was considered just a PD&E or the design phase was funded within the cost feasible plan, it was considered as a cost feasible project. Now the projects, only as they're funded all the way through construction, are considered necessarily cost feasible. That doesn't really change how the plan works itself, it's just how we're describing the projects themselves. So you're going to have some partially funded projects that may not be considered cost feasible, but are still for planning purposes and for going into the list of priority projects and ultimately the TIP, still available to advance forward. They're just not considered cost feasible or considered to be complete by that 2050 horizon, just to paint a little bit better picture of what this plan is supposed to be doing. So some of the challenges that we faced this year under the development of the financial resources was really looking at that cost feasible definition. How these projects now are not going to be all fully funded and considered cost feasible from the 2045 plan to now what we're developing here into the 2050 plan. That doesn't mean these projects are stopping or on hold or not moving forward. It just means that definition has changed a little bit. Also, as we were going into this plan, we were looking at opportunities for more discretionary funding coming out of the infrastructure law. Unfortunately, that has now started to rescind back some of those funds, especially the carbon reduction funds, have been returned to the federal government. We also have to look at some other cost increases that have been going on. Over the years, you've heard everything about the supply chain and then inflation and construction costs increasing. Well, we also could have some new stormwater rules, which could increase those costs for those construction projects as they need more room for retention and retaining that stormwater. Also, the lack of mitigation credits, meaning we just can't move wetlands around anymore. It's going to cost a little bit more as these projects are going to be required to mitigate for those impacts that could hurt the wetlands or other natural environment. And then, obviously, materials, labor, and inflation, all of those went into these kind of cost estimates and looking at really that financial picture in the future. A little change in the funding forecast framework between the 2045 plan and then this plan. Previously, a lot of the funding that was in the plan, 75% was considered state funds and 25% were from the federal side. The way the plan was developed, if you just look at kind of those two boxes in the middle, we had two kind of buckets of funds, one which were called other arterials, which were lumped together, really were our main source of funding, and the other one were our TMA funds, which were dedicated directly to the TPO. Now, within this plan, those funds had to be divided up and to identify what was really federal, what was state, and where they can go appropriately based on the eligibility of projects. In doing so, also with the new legislation, that funding shift has kind of inversed, if not even more, where the federal share is at 82%, where the state share is only at 18%. This also reflects kind of that funding shift of the Florida Department of Transportation. As you saw in a presentation a couple months ago, the department is looking at more preservation and maintenance of their system based on state statutes and what they need to do, which leaves a lot less for the capacity projects, or really those capacity projects and building them out forward. So that's looking at less of those state revenues, which you saw in that pie chart, and more reliance on some of those federal funds. Comparing the 2045 plan to the 2050, we're looking at a loss of about $722 million over the 20-year period. Dividing that up over those 5-year blocks as we have to develop this cost-feasible plan, just something to identify is if you look at those state funding, is only about $20 million per year, or per 5-year block, meaning $80 million over that 20-year period versus a significant amount of difference over that 2045 plan. Just in context, that $80 million is about how much Ellis Road cost. So that couldn't be funded, or only could be funded, over that 20-year period if you're looking at the difference in the funding between the two plans. As I mentioned, fiscally constrained. When you look at the boxes of funds and look at the money that we have available over those 5-year periods, we cannot spend more than we have available. So what I've highlighted here is that $77 million of these 3 projects, hypothetically going forward, we couldn't fund the construction within that last year of 2041 through 2045 because there's not enough funding. So then that project would have to shift out 5 more years to make sure that we are fiscally constrained within the plan. And just as a little comparison between the 2045 and the 2050, looking at what could be cost feasible, based on the available revenues, we're looking at possibly about 17% of the needs being funded or cost feasible, where before it was about 48% based on the 2045 plan of what the financial resources were available. So just kind of pause there and see if there's any questions before I go into next steps. But these are some of the challenges that we're facing as we're going into this plan and development, and what we're looking at what could be really those priorities for the next 5 years for the TPO and the region.
Yeah, Eric, can you, testing, can you expand a little bit more on this state switch? And you kind of touched on it about more about sustaining as opposed to growing the infrastructure. Can you,
Sure. So, well, every 5 years, the state does a financial forecast. And when they're looking at what revenues are available for this kind of 20-year period, the last forecast did not estimate as many, a recession or as much of electric vehicles going down. So a lot of those, or the reduction in, taxes from electric vehicles, a lot of those variables were included in this 2050, along with kind of that supply chain. So the state lowered their forecast. It was not as robust as, say, the 2045 plan was, where they had a lot more optimistic revenue forecasts. So they lowered that a little bit, but along with really the cost of projects, and then with the lower forecast and the state's statute to really focus on preservation and maintenance, that leaves a lot less money available for these capacity projects. And really kind of that shift between not only the definition and then the funding is to set more of a realistic expectation of what projects could be completed over this 20-year period versus more of a pie in the sky, rosy picture of what could be funded over a 20-year period, since there's far less money. Okay.
Can you go back to the previous graphic? I don't think we have it in the, or maybe
Yeah.
one last. There is one that I.
Veronica, if you would, speak into the microphone, please. Or you can move the microphone.
Is it this graph?
That's it, I think, Nick.
Yeah, that wasn't in the packet.
We just included.
That we have. There was another one that I didn't see in the handout.
It was.
It was? Okay.
The colorful one, yeah, we added that.
Okay.
So this demonstrates really how instead of having that big block of money in kind of your bank account, we only have the small increments of money over those 5-year periods, so we can't spend beyond what's there. So really demonstrating that fiscal constraint is even tougher as these projects, and you're looking at these construction costs in the future being so high that it could really push these projects out even further as they're very large construction projects. Okay. Well, some of our next steps, we have a working group meeting coming up in May on the 21st. Our public open house is going to be June 11th. Please, looking for everybody to help attend. We're going to present the plan, going through the bike ped, coming back to you as the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee, and then ultimately present to the board in July. We're going to have a public comment period and hopefully adopt in September as we're going forward. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any more questions. Otherwise,
Any questions for Nick? Okay,
all right,
thank you,
I think
Nick.
I left everybody in shock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Greg, yeah.
Okay, our next presentation is the draft fiscal year 2026 list of project priorities. Good morning, Sarah.
All right, good morning, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. So annually, we are required to adopt a list of project priorities. And as Nick already showed this slide, but just kind of, we're gonna take the bridge one step further. So we're leaving one side and we're right now standing on the bridge. And basically, the bridge is the mechanism that we use to take projects out of the long-range transportation plan, prioritize them for implementation and funding for ultimately going into the tip, which Georgiana will present the draft tip here following my presentations. We're really getting to see the full picture of these 3 core work products of taking a project from a need all the way to being built. So while the LRTP, we're looking at a 20-25 year snapshot, the list of project priorities is really supposed to be what are the projects that we're wanting to pursue funding for in the next 5th year to go into the TIP. So we do follow a very specific procedure for the list of project priorities. It's PR 07-01, Project Priorities and Transportation Improvement Program. We rank projects based on 2 things. One is a quantitative score that is a very set of specific criteria that equals up to 100 points. And then there is discretionary ranking. So committees and our governing board can make a recommendation for a project to move up in ranking, with the governing board having the ultimate approval of whether or not the project will be moved. We do also, within our procedure, we do try to look at projects as far as readiness and also a finish what we started direction. So if a project only needs construction, then we really should be we are directed to prioritize it and pursue that, prior to starting projects that might only have a planning phase or could be in design and need right of way. As far as that quantitative scoring goes, as I said, it's a very specific set of data-oriented scoring, and the criterias are based on safety, transportation and land use, so improving access to community resources, hospitals, the ports, resiliency and sustainability, so considering drainage, stormwater, sea level rise, hurricanes, etc. Innovation, ITS, and other unique solutions, and then multimodal, so bike ped. So what's new this year? So this year we did not conduct an annual call for projects. This was for several reasons. One, as Nick just mentioned, we're having to kind of take a step back and really consider our LRTP and our financial resources. We already have quite a robust list of project priorities, and so we felt like at this point it didn't make sense for us to be adding more projects when we're in flux with the new LRTP and really having to take a step back and looking at our financial resources. Also, as you'll see later, our buckets aren't very full. We don't have a lot of water or apples or whatever it is to kind of spread around right now. So really we wanted to ensure that we're focused on the projects that are already prioritized and making sure that we have the best list ever or possible. And so in that sense, we did update the project funding and phase. If you do have a project, if you could, on the list of project priorities, if you could please get with me as soon as possible on updating your estimates, that would be greatly appreciated. We also updated our scores based on the current state of the system and high entry network. So you will see that there are some projects that have moved up and down because they've either now had an increase in crashes and fatalities, or maybe an increase in congestion, or maybe they decreased in capacity. We moved the COCO multimodal station to the CIS list, and we'll be pursuing a CIS designation. This is really, the multimodal station is a very unique project, and we were trying to find the place where it best fits within our list of project priorities. As it is an intermodal facility, it is eligible to go on the strategic intermodal system. And so we want to put it there to elevate it, not above the other CIS lists, but just as an individual project as a intermodal facility. We also made the decision to separate our regionally significant projects into state and non-state roadways. So basically tells our story a little bit better. And then we added one project, which was the I-95 PD&E from St. John Heritage Parkway to State Road 519 Fisk, and that's simply for planning capacity or consistency. That project is already kicked off and partially funded for the project development and environmental phase. We had some projects that were fully funded, and so these projects moved off of the list of project priorities and onto our fully funded list. We have the Jackson Avenue Complete Street Project for $3.9 million, and that was a commitment from the City of Satellite for $2 million and the TPO for $1.9 million. Ellis Road widening, It has also moved off to the fully funded, and I'll chit-chat about that a little more in my next slide. There's a safety project on State Road 3, Courtney, from Catalina Isle to the 528 eastbound ramps. Excuse me, and that'll be going under construction in 2027. That design is like about to kick off now. As Georgiana mentioned, the Taylor Avenue A1A PHB mid-block crossing was approved at the last board meeting, and then we fully funded the Malabar Road ITS construction for 2029 for $4.1 million. So, I know we've talked a lot about Ellis Road. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with what the project is. But just to give some highlights, clearing and grubbing will start shortly. I did drive by it this weekend, and it hasn't started quite yet. I'm sure Cliff will probably celebrate and let us know as soon as he starts seeing action.
July.
There.
It's supposed to happen in July.
Okay, very good. And so, as Georgiana, has mentioned, a SIB loan will be covering $15 million to be paid back over the course of several years. In 2027 and 2028, the state will be contributing $3.75 million. In 2029, the state will be contributing $750,000, TPO $3 million, and then in 2030, the TPO $3.75 million. We also had some projects that were completed. So US 192 Hollywood Evans intersection. Right now, as I said, I was just down that way. It's torn up because of a different project, but it definitely looks like a beautiful intersection. State Road 405 NASA Bridge was completed. State Road 520 complete street improvements is completed, as well as also the safety project on Clear Lake is, I think they're still doing a couple more activities, but ultimately these projects, are so close to construction that by the time, or completion, that by the time we adopt the list of project priorities in July, they will be completed. So to review our draft list of project priorities, you do have the draft list within your packet, as well as also some maps to help tell the story and show what our project's priorities are. I'm not going to go through every single project, but just kind of highlight some of the changes. So as you'll notice, the Cocoa Multimodal Station is up at the top. It's partially funded for construction. So with that finish what we started mentality, obviously a project that is partially funded for construction will instantly go up to the top of any list. I will mention that this is not competing with any of these other projects for funding, as it is a grant funded, grants are being pursued rather than strategic intermodal system funds. Also, as I mentioned, we do have the PD&E along 95, and that is partially funded with $3.5 million from FDOT and then $1 million from the City of Palm Bay. It still needs an additional $5.4 million to be a complete project. Two huge projects and very important projects on our SIS list are the State Road 528 6-laning and the replacement of the State Road 401 bridge. These are vital in the function of Port Canaveral, as well as also our space industry. Some accomplishments that have been made on it is the completion of the design concepts along with the PD&E for the State Road 401 bridge replacement. A wharf study was completed by Space Florida in April 2024. The 528 design is continuously being worked on with the project manager of Tyler Burgett. And there will be a resurfacing along 401 as well. So there are improvements, but slowly but surely this project definitely needs to be funded. But if you take a look, $365 million, $329 million, and $260 million. These are very, very large, very expensive projects. I already mentioned the I-95 8-laning, but I did want to mention that a resurfacing is going to be starting soon. So when you start seeing construction, it is not the 8-laning. It is, resurfacing I-95, which is greatly needed, especially, in our southern part of our county towards Palm Bay. So as I also mentioned at the beginning, we did split out state roadways on our regionally significant list. So you'll see that because of that, there were some shuffling of projects. And so it's hard to kind of compare the 2 years kind of one-to-one, apples to apples. But one of the major changes was that the State Road 519 Fisk Boulevard at Roy Wall project has bumped up to the beginning because, once again, finish what you started. It needs 1.4, about 1.34. I'm reading the wrong column, I apologize. 3.5 million for construction. So that design is at 90% plans and really complete. So we really need to focus on getting FDOT as a funding partner and Rockledge. So let's move forward with this construction. The State Road, I'm going to talk about the State Road 405 project here in a little bit on a separate slide. And then moving to our next slide, you'll notice that there's a lot of intersection improvements. These are some projects that could be a really great bang for our buck. And, you know, the planning's been completed, and they are currently not moving forward. So just to highlight a couple of projects, the State Road A1A Complete Street has been a long-standing priority project. The project is within the city of Cape Canaveral and intends to reconstruct A1A from Long Point to George King to create a complete street that accommodates vehicles, bicyclists, pedestrians, transit, in a more holistic approach. So this project is not funded for right-of-way or construction. However, in the interim, there will be a resurfacing, as well as also the PHB, or pedestrian hybrid beacon, at Taylor Avenue will be included within that resurfacing. We have another widening on 524. So the PD&E is complete. The design phase is anticipated to go into begin very shortly. That was funded by the Space Coast TPO in the city of Cocoa. Right-of-way is unfunded, but really it's a much smaller amount of right-of-way than a lot of these widening projects, as well as also construction is unfunded. During the design phase, we will definitely continue to explore phasing options, where potentially we might pursue a widening in one, segment prior to other segments in order to get the project moving and really focus in on what is the area within the 524 corridor that is most needed. Kind of a similar story with the 501 Clear Lake widening from Michigan Ave to Industry Road. This project, the PD&E, is currently being updated from a SEER, or State Environmental Impact Report, to a full federal PD&E so that it can have federal funds put on the project. During that, they are also updating the design. And this is another situation where we are looking at, is there potential of phasing it to get the segment that is most needed moving sooner than rather looking at biting off the whole corridor. This is a less expensive widening, but even saying that, you have 20 million in right-of-way, 13 million in construction, and as you just saw, our financial resources look pretty bleak, especially with this being a state road. The last state road project I wanted to highlight is the 405 South Street Corridor Study. This is underway. This is kind of a pre-PD&E project. The PD&E phase is unfunded at this time for 1.9 million. This is another situation where phasing is definitely going to have to be considered, especially when you look at the traffic counts and capacity it's at closer to the intersection of State Road 405 and State Road 50. Rather, as you get further north, it's not quite as needed. Next section is our regionally significant non-state roadways. There really wasn't much change within here, other than, as I mentioned, we might have some changes due to changes in capacity and safety. However, we did split back out the Babcock Street projects, and so in the past we've had Babcock split out into segments. We then put them back together. We've now split them. Really, this is once again going with the same kind of conversation that I keep having. Is we can't, you're going to struggle with getting a full segment completely funded. A full corridor completely funded. And so trying to bite it off where it's chunks that could be approached and in a way of thinking about what will help the citizens within that area the most at this time. So the number one project on our regionally significant non-state roadways is the Malabar Road 4-laning. And really, this project is to improve capacity as well as also address some intersection safety issues, and it does include multimodal improvements as well. It would also enhance the access to St. John's Heritage Parkway with that intersection. As far as safety goes, there were 642 crashes from 2016 to 2020. So, clearly this is a corridor that needs to be looked at and improved. The PD&E is complete. The design phase has been awarded. I know that City of Palm Bay and FDOT are in the middle of looking at their local, at the LAP agreement. That project was funded by the Space Coast TPO as well as also the City of Palm Bay. Right-of-way is unfunded, but it is a much smaller project. But when you look forward to construction, you're looking at closer to 120 million, 150 million for construction. And so how do we bite off that project and get something built in order to improve this area? Babcock is another priority from Miko to Malabar. As I mentioned, we have been in discussions with the City of Palm Bay as well as also Brevard County on how do we segment this to get the most bang for our buck and really improve the lives and access for citizens down in that area. But the city and county are exploring funding interim improvements at some of the intersections because obviously this is a very large project. Design alone is 19 million. When you break out and you look at just funding a segment, you're looking at 16 million for construction. It's a very expensive project. I just wanted to highlight two more sections on our list of project priorities. We do have the transportation system management and operations. These are very important projects that really give you a good bang for your buck. If you've ever been driving and you get stopped at a red light and then you get a green light and then you get a red light, ensuring that we have signal connectivity and optimize the use of our ITS system. Bicycle and pedestrian projects, I don't want us to lose sight of the potential bike ped projects out there. We do have specific transportation alternative funding that is meant to go to bike ped projects. You will notice that every single one of our bike ped projects are on state roadways. So, if next year when we do a call for projects, if there is any sidewalk improvements on your local roadways, pull out our bike ped master plan, see if they're eligible, give me a call. We really want to make sure that we're building sidewalks that are connecting to your communities and providing the most access for your citizens. So, I already kind of gave you a spoiler alert, we have all these projects and we'd really like to move them forward. The financial outcome looks a little glib. So, we're really looking at not really being able to pursue any kind of new project until fiscal year 30. And partially that is because of, the funding of the SIB loan with Ellis. We also, funded the Malabar ITS, which is a very needed project. But, the estimates are coming in higher and higher, and we're trying to continue to keep the projects that are already funded whole, but we can only do that so much. So we're definitely, going to have to think about creative funding and grant opportunities and partnering to move projects forward. And with that, I will take any questions for the draft list of project priorities.
Questions for Sarah? Go ahead, Bob.
Two quick questions regarding 401 and 528. The estimated costs, are they updated? Is that the latest and greatest?
That was the latest and greatest that I had, Georgiana. I don't believe.
We are going to reach out to Ed Kestery just to ensure that it is, but on CFL roads, it was just recently updated. So we think that it is, but we want to confirm it.
Thank you. And then related to that, I know with the Cape Canaveral A1A's Complete Street project, that piece between George King and 401, that needs to fall in one of those as well to look at pedestrian and bike access ultimately up to the 528 pedestrian trail that's planned. So that's kind of a missing piece. I
Missing
think I
element.
brought that up before, so that's something we have to keep track on, although I know what the latest time frame is for that project, but just to make sure we don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bob.
Eric?
So, so back on the slide with the $1 billion that is construction unfunded, those 3 projects. So
Oh,
can-
yes.
Sorry about I'm a little under the weather.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to hear that. There we go.
Okay, so the question is, can you kind of explain to us how you might split up or look at different ways to find the funding? Maybe kind of the thinking process behind, how to get at $365 million. And then also as part of that, because these numbers are so big, is it really a realistic outcome that these projects can be funded altogether? I mean, is it possible that they may not be done ever because of these huge numbers? So kind of walk us through sort of the mental exercise of dividing it up and trying to find those funding sources.
Georgiana, would you?
Sure,
like to-
I will attempt to. Well, you've hit the nail right on the head, and we are having those conversations internally and with Port Canaveral. In fact, there's a meeting this week that we're going to kind of dig into some of this. We've also, I've had a conversation with Secretary Tyler about this as well. I know that DOT is thinking about it, but we do need to come up with a real strategy. One of the things that's been floated is, perhaps the mega grant. Now, this infrastructure bill, I think it sunsets September of 2026 or October 2026. So with a new infrastructure bill, are there more opportunities to go after some sort of mega grant? And could you go after all 3? And, this, with the importance of the 401 bridge, the Department of Defense, could it be a strategy to go after certain types of funding? So that's one thing that has been talked about. Or do we go with a low-hanging fruit and go after the bridge? The bridge is extremely important, not only for the cruise industry, but for national defense as well, and the fuel, where the fuel is at. So there has been a lot of different strategies considered. The eastern portion of 528 is also very important because it ties into 401. So perhaps those 2 projects go, and then the western section, which by the way has more traffic, sits there for a little bit. So it's a catch-22. We are going to have to look at all options and all discussions to try and figure out the best avenue. I don't have the answer, but those conversations will continue, and I think we will get closer than when we've been in in a long time over the next couple of years.
Thank you. So on a somewhat related note, I know Nick went over the revenue forecast. Has there been any discussions on looking at new revenue sources, whether it be charging electric vehicles what they should pay, or potential Brevard charging local oxygen gas tax that is sitting on the table still? Has any of that come up in the revenue discussions?
So I'll start, and then Georgiana, if you want to jump in, or if there's something I missed. So I would say no, but we, as part of our strategy with the long-range transportation plan, when Nick presents the cost feasible plan in July, he is going to start mentioning some of those additional funding sources. I can tell you that within our internal documents, we're going to ensure that they're discussed, or not internal documents, but within the LRTP documents and tech memos, we're going to ensure that those options are discussed. It's definitely a larger conversation that needs to be had, is because clearly it's not, our financial resources isn't sustainable as it is. Georgiana, would you like to add anything?
Well, I can tell you that Brevard County, they've been having budget meetings, and they have been, from a transportation standpoint, been talking about what are some options. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere at this point in time, but they are they've been talking about some different potential options from a local perspective. But if you want to go after, I think we all know that this is about partnership. And the department is looking for funding partners. And I think whether we're talking about the widening of 524 or some of these larger projects, the city of Palm Bay actually is throwing money at I-95 for a PD&E. So these are important projects for the community. And so whether it's a SIS facility or a state road or a local road, it's about funding partnerships. And so, if the county is in a position to start looking at some other funding options, it could definitely help move some of these projects forward. Because I know the cities are doing it. The city of Cocoa has been a huge leader as well in putting money on 524. As well as
the
Cocoa
intermodal station.
as well as the Cocoa station as well. So we're going to, it was a great presentation, Sarah, and I think this is just kind of a reality check as we move into the next discussion of the cost feasible plan and our priority list. And what does this look like for us in the future? We're going to have to make some tough decisions.
It's kind of like a perfect storm with the decrease in funding and the rising cost of construction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really difficult.
Yeah, Eric?
Just a quick follow-up. Has there ever been any discussion of like private-public partnerships where the industries that are most affected, the cruise industry, the defense industry, space industry, why isn't there something that incentivizes them because of future business and opportunities to maybe making more of a contribution to these infrastructure needs?
Actually, the I-95 six-laning, that was, I believe, a public-private partnership to get that six-laning done on a portion of it years ago. So I do think those conversations will continue. I think they're going to have to be, quite frankly. As we move forward, I think we're going to have to talk about that.
Anything else for Sarah?
Yeah, Greg?
Yes, Sarah. Y'all have been around for a while. It seems like there's been a radical shift in the funding between state and federal on the current pie chart. As long as I've been here, there's always been fiscal constraints, but this seems to be a rather radical shift. Is it just because the state funding has come up short? Or, question mark?
Well, I think it's a couple. There's no one answer. As Cliff mentioned, the rising costs. I think that definitely FDOT as well as the TPO are having to consider keeping projects that are already in the pipeline whole. So, ensuring that there are contingency funds that aren't being put on new projects where then you're later having to go, oh, just kidding, you're actually not funded. But then also, the slide that Nick showed, that was one of FDOT's slides showing that, their real priority is the level of maintenance that they're pursuing. It's one of those perfect storm situations where you have to continue to maintain pavement condition. And when a roadway comes up on a resurfacing, you have to respond as well in order to also maintain your performance measures. And so the state is put under pressure of having performance measures. Now they have opted to set their performance higher than they are required to. So they're trying to ensure that there's that the infrastructure that's already in place is being taken care of. But that does put a strain on the resources of the projects that are needed. 524, we're going to see it hit capacity before you get a widening, and that's a problem. So
this sounds like a growth problem.
There are elements that are growth problems. There's
Growth-driven.
also materials. A I can't quite spit out a resurfacing, cost off the top of my head, but for example, a trail project when I started at the Space Coast TPO was $800,000 to $1 million for a mile of trail. You're now looking at $3 million for a mile of trail. So,
Okay.
increase in cost of materials is definitely a problem.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thank you very much
Yeah.
for trying to explain it. It's
Yeah,
not easy.
it's complicated.
But I will say, Greg, to your point, growth across the Central Florida region is huge for the state of Florida. And, basically from Brevard County all the way, to the west coast of Florida. And so we're competing, there's a lot of needs. So we're competing with the Central Florida region for funding.
I hadn't
And-
even considered that.
And when you think about the needs of I-4, I don't think, and other, I-75, I mean, these are major projects, which is the reason why I think the Moving Florida Forward, the governor's initiative, pumped so much money at those projects. It would be really nice if there is a new initiative and perhaps go after some other projects that was not able to be able to move forward. That would be wonderful for Brevard County.
To Georgiana's point is, our district, so FDOT District 5, they basically, in our revenue forecast, gave one pot of money that then all of the MPOs had to come together and go, how are we going to divvy this up? And we did go with population. So clearly, Metro Plan Orlando is going to get a larger chunk because they're serving more individuals.
Awesome. Thank you for the additional details.
Okay, anything else for Sarah?
I know Ginger's had her hand up for quite a while.
Go ahead, Ginger.
I just wanted to know, on the spreadsheet here, the dates in which these projects are conceived. Is that ever possible to see the age of these projects and how long it takes to come to fruition or to the different stages?
We don't necessarily have a spreadsheet that has a complete, when the projects went on the list of project priorities, just because methodology has changed over the years.
True. But the concept.
The concept is you're looking at, in a perfect world, a corridor study is 2 years, PD&E is 2 years, design 2 years, right? You're looking at a 10-year in a perfect world. That's when all of your financial resources and staff resources magically put together. I can tell you that at the beginning of the year, I decided because I'm a transportation nerd, to pull out our 2025 our 2025 LRTP because it was 2025 and look at what we've accomplished. And for example, the A1A project was on the 2025 LRTP.
Yeah. Just be interesting to see the timeline.
Yeah.
See when things do come to fruition.
How long it took.
Yeah.
We
Some
used
of
to
the projects have
keep
been there forever.
Yeah, we used to keep track of that years ago, and technically we only have to keep some of those documents for 5 years.
Yeah.
And we got to the point we did a major cleaning, and so a lot of that paper went away. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ginger, just to put things in a little perspective, St. John's Heritage Parkway was in conversation for over 30 years.
Yeah, no, I know. I think people need to know about this.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
again, that's...
And it influences the prioritization.
Well, that's been over 30 years of widening of Malabar Road from Babcock Street to US 1. This is the third PD&E that's been done on that over the last 30 years. So again, it's getting tougher because cost of construction, cost of right-of-way. It's I think Cliff mentioned it's, a perfect storm with the rising cost of construction and less funding. But as Greg pointed out, there's a third factor, and that's growth.
Yeah, uncontrolled growth,
yeah.
unplanned growth, yes.
Yep. Peter, you had
So.
something?
The Malabar Road to US 1 for
Yep.
40 years.
Yeah, well, that's the one I just mentioned, yeah. There have been 3 PD&Es done on that. Yeah.
Yeah,
40 years.
And of course, now it's on hold once again.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the impact that it makes, the people that it impacts. So.
Without a doubt.
When you're down on the south end of the county, seeing stuff going on up at the port, yes, security and transportation is important, but getting to work is important too.
Yeah, without a doubt, and also getting home safely. That's why the I-95 exit at Malabar Road is so important, especially us in Palm Bay. But Anybody who's ever driven south on Pomay coming home from work trying to get off Malabar Road is well aware of the
I get the
problems with that
Pompeii Road.
intersection.
But yeah, you guys back it up, and then I can't get home.
Exactly.
One other question is, in prioritization of the bike ped stuff, are we looking at all the user groups now? Because we have golf carts out there.
We are not prioritizing based on golf cart use. That is the transportation alternative funding is specifically supposed to be used for bicyclists and pedestrians. So we're sticking within our box of what is actually an eligible project. The concept of micromobility is such a larger conversation than just golf carts. And we definitely recognize that that's a conversation that we need to figure out how the TPO can help better plan. Abby and now Leah are doing an amazing job of trying to educate on the safety as far as these micromobility options are out there. And, we're seeing the use of them more and more. But from a planning side, we really need to sit down and kind of strategize what we can do. I, offhanded mentioned it to one of our consultants during another meeting, asking kind of like, have you done anything? And so we need to tackle it better, but I would not anticipate that would be considered in prioritization because the funding source is not meant to address golf carts.
It's a whole nother aspect of things that are happening. And as a pedestrian or a recreational bike rider that rides on the sidewalk, it makes it quite difficult when they interact because they are motorized vehicles.
And you have the other layer of enforcement.
Yes, which doesn't exist.
We don't have control of from a planning perspective.
And it doesn't exist.
So, I appreciate your comments, Ginger.
Right.
And there can be local policy that needs to come into play as well on the local level that can address that.
Okay, anything else for Sarah?
Well, thank you so much.
Sarah, good job.
Yes, great.
Next, we're going to have the draft fiscal year 2026 through 2030 Transportation Improvement Program.
Just a quick note, if anyone has a black Mercedes SUV in the parking lot, the back hatch is open. So if anybody's here, just let you know.
Is it full of money?
That would be nice. All right. So today I'm presenting the draft fiscal year 26 through 30 Transportation Improvement Program. And of course, this is another one of our core work products that is required under federal and state law. So what is it? It lists projects by phase and funding for the next 5 years. It's really our short-term plan. It identifies projects for maintaining and improving the transportation system for all modes. And, of course, here in Brevard County, we have a very diverse transportation portfolio, but most importantly, the TIP brings our vision to life. And we strive very hard to provide a safe, multimodal, innovative, and resilient transportation system for all. And of course, this is our transportation planning bridge, we like to call it, to all of our projects in orbit, in keeping with the space theme. Only projects that have been identified in the long-range plan as cost feasible can be added to the list of project priorities. Once a phase receives funding, it moves into the draft tentative work program, and then it's added to the Transportation Improvement Program for implementation. And this is just the TIP development process. Our LOP, or List of Project Priorities, was approved in July of last year. We turn that list over to the DOT so that they can evaluate it for available funding. That's typically done in the summer and the fall. And once the DOT programs projects that are eligible, then it gets adopted in January of 2025. So the draft tentative work program was adopted earlier this year. That download is given to each one of the MPOs to develop our transportation improvement program, which really is a snapshot. Once we adopt this in July, if any new project or any major change is added to the TIP, then we come to you with a TIP amendment, and you will see those throughout the year. But our public meeting, our open house, as we call it, is scheduled for June 11th, and we will be having a 30-day public comment period, and final adoption will be at the July meeting. So what are you approving? 112 projects, $1.3 billion. And of course, this is real money on real projects that will hopefully improve our quality of life here in Brevard County. So if we look at the TIP for this year, this graph displays funding amounts for each transportation mode. And you can look at our major projects or the highway and bridge capacity. So these are going to be projects in our list of project priorities. We have maintenance, which is, of course, is preservation of the system. We've talked a lot about that. Resurfacing, fixed capital outlay, over $300 million. We have safety projects. These are standalone safety projects, such as pedestrian and guardrail, things of that nature, that are above and beyond what may be included in a capacity project or a resurfacing. Sidewalks and trails, technology, that's our ITS, traffic control devices. Transit, aviation, seaport, and spaceport. These are, our modal agencies. And depending on the type of funding, the department may require matching funds for these modal agencies. Sometimes they may use a soft match, but typically you will see an LF fund code when you look into the TIP, and that is what we call local funds. But the DOT folks work directly with our modal agencies to be able to program these projects. They don't necessarily come through the TPO, but we work very closely with all of our modal agencies and meet with them routinely throughout the year. Intermodal rail is $27 million, and then planning is 19.6. This is the TPO boxes, as well as our unified planning work program, the projects that we incorporate into our business plan that we work on throughout the year. And so that comes to the $1.3 billion for our transportation improvement program. And just real quickly, Sarah's already talked about Ellis. I'm just going to highlight just a few projects that are included in this TIP of significance. And of course, it's got to be our number one priority, the widening of Ellis. In this TIP in 2026, there's over $70 million. And of course, that's some right-of-way and construction. And a total of $92 million in the DOT's work program. And we are very excited that that clearing and grubbing will be starting in July. And these are some new resurfacing projects. State Road 407, State Road 524. We talked about the widening of 524, but there is a big resurfacing coming up very soon for that project. Sarno Road, I-95 in the very north part of the county, major resurfacing, over $22 million. And the last time I traveled that, it is desperately needed. The freight on I-95 is huge. And so it can put a lot of wear and tear on the roadway. And then new safety and ITS projects. A1A and Atlantic Boulevard pedestrian safety improvement. We also have a safety project on O'Galley, Malabar Road. That's the ITS project that Sarah mentioned from the Parkway to San Filippo. And then a railroad crossing safety improvement and monitoring system project. That is a DOT project there. And so our public comment period will run from May 23rd to June 20th. And we will be, of course, as I mentioned, having a big open house. We want to hear from the public. You have the draft TIP in your agenda package. And we've developed a new TIP tool. And so we will be coming to you a little later in the year to kind of give you a little overview of how to use it, so you can look up specific projects in your area and sort it. And we think that it will be really good for engaging the public. So we're excited about that. So this is just the raw data, the projects in your agenda package, but there's a lot more to the actual TIP document. It has performance measures. It has an executive summary. And so when we finalize that, we will be bringing you a copy for you to look at. So the comment portal, you can leave any responses as you review the tip in the comment portal. And please share it with folks. We'll be happy to answer any questions on the tip. Is that right?
Yeah, does that actually add up to 19 million, or am I missing something? I got 84.5 million.
The
Yep,
3.8
you're
is
correct.
over multiple years.
Oh, that's correct. That is correct. Yeah. Yeah.
For each year.
That's the payback alone?
The payback is throughout those years. I haven't actually added that up, but
Yes, Stephen?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out on the spaceport one, that is kind of a jarring graphic, you know, how much funding goes into that. But Georgiana mentioned the programs with the matching funds. 50% of that amount is matching funds from the space industry. And so those funds, like, we actually have a 5-to-1 return on investment on those state funds with all of our spaceport projects. And just an additional layer, that's not just for Brevard, that's for the entire state, because we are a statewide organization. And for some reason, the entire state's spaceport funding is shown through the District 5 aviation program. So we also have done projects up at Cecil Field up in Jacksonville. It is a licensed spaceport. So that funding's eligible to go up there as well. So it's not just here in Brevard, and we have other spaceport territories up in the Panhandle. Tyndall and Eglin Air Force Bases and Homestead Air Force Base is a spaceport territory as well. So that funding is eligible on all of those different spaceport territories. So just wanted to
well,
call
I
that out.
appreciate that, because we have heard some pushback on, oh, the space is getting all this funding, but you know, you're bringing in this private industry, and again, it is a 50% match. And so this is certainly really good for Brevard County. So I appreciate that.
Okay, anything else for Georgiana? All right, thank you. We'll move on. Vision Zero Action Plan 2024, the annual report.
Good morning, Patty Rendon, Transportation Planner. I'll be presenting the 2024 Vision Zero Annual Report before going into the 2024 crash data. From 2018 to 2022, there were 427 deaths and 2,317 serious injuries on Brevard County roads. The Space Coast TPO and local partners adopted Vision Zero to combat this crisis, aligning with state and federal initiatives to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. This annual report supports the updated Vision Zero action plan adopted February 2024, and also aligns with the Florida Department of Transportation's target of 0 fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. To give you some highlights from the 2024 wins, we worked with 34 collaborative partnerships, met with 12 law enforcement agencies, engaged 6 community partners in high injury network areas, and distributed free safety materials and resources to 35 communities. This year, in addition to the Rail Crossing Elimination Grant, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant was awarded to the City of Palm Bay for the Emerson Drive project, which includes a sidewalk extension and speed management, and will improve safety for vulnerable road users, especially near local schools. The Space Coast TPO also received the FDOT D5 Outreach Award at the Central Florida Inaugural Safety Summit for the work done to spread safety messaging to our community. The report also showcases some of the outreach activities and partnerships, including with local law enforcement and participating in the Central Florida Safety Strategic Plan Committee meeting. These collaborations on transportation safety, along with our robust digital safety campaigns, are part of our efforts to connect with the community and advance the Space Coast TPO's Vision Zero priorities. The Space Coast TPO analyzed Brevard County's fatal and serious injury crash data from 2018 to 2022 to understand where crashes occur and evaluate other crash characteristics. This analysis helped identify countermeasures and strategies for the updated action plan, and revisiting the crash data annually helps us track the progress of that action plan and the advancement towards the goal of zero deaths and serious injury. In 2024 specifically, 82 people died and 372 were seriously injured. Compared to previous years, this is an average 12% decrease in fatalities and serious injuries, which I will go into more detail with our crash data. Here we have the year-by-year comparison to the average from 2020 through 2023. We saw an 11% decrease in fatalities specifically and a 12% decrease in serious injury. Vulnerable road users make up 37% of fatalities and serious injuries. While they are underrepresented in number on our roadways, pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists are more likely to be in a higher severity crash. And finally, the emphasis areas from the 2024 data, 40% are intersection related, 30% are lane departure related, 30% are aging road users, 16% speeding and aggressive driving, 14% distracted driving, and 13% impaired driving. And hard copies of the annual report will be distributed at the July TAC-CAC meeting. And if you have any questions.
Harry Ruffle, I have a question going back to your beginning crash statistics. You had the colored circle, that one there.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is the bicycle versus motorcycle. With the proliferation of these electric bikes and tricycles, doesn't that kind of skew some of the statistics? Because now that they go 20 and 30 miles an hour, they're basically approaching motorcycle speed. So I'm curious to see if when they are establishing these statistics, are they indicating that it's an electric bike or a regular normal bicycle? Right. I mean, because that's important information. I mean, the increase in speed. I mean, I live in Cape Canaveral, and it's crazy. I mean, even though we have multi-use paths, it's pretty bad. And so I would like to think that you'll need to go back and look at this. I mean, are they asking the right questions when they record these accident information? Do they include whether or not it's an electric bike or a regular pedal bike?
And where's the golf course?
So I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are talking about this on the statewide level, because there's really no. It depends on the law enforcement officer and who's actually handling the accident, or excuse me, the crash. I can't believe I said accident. And so, I think that they are having those discussions up in Tallahassee. I know there has been some legislation trying to put some sort of rules and enforcement or, penalties on these e-bikes. So I don't know the complete answer to your question. I think it really depends on the police officer, how it's being recorded, but it is being talked about on the statewide level.
And it is something that perhaps needs to be addressed with the local law enforcement. And it
Yes.
should be something that, I don't know whether it's something that TPO can be more engaged in, but it's obviously the e-bikes fell into a hole. There are laws for motorized bicycles, but they don't consider e-bikes motorized bicycles.
Yeah, we went on a law enforcement tour last year and met with every one of our law enforcement agencies here in Brevard County, as well as the Sheriff's Department. And this is a conversation that has come up. It's on their radar. It's being talked about on the local level at council meetings, especially at the beaches where they're seeing, this a lot. So it's a problem, but there's not a definitive answer yet. But I think it is being focused. And to your point, you're absolutely right. They're very dangerous. Very dangerous.
It gets worse when you talk about scooters. I was beat out by a scooter yesterday doing close to 40 miles an hour, and I'm driving down the road, and this guy, coming back from the movies. It's incredible. It's scary.
Go ahead, Eric.
So aside from the danger that was just talked about, I think the other thing is the data analytics part. So for example, if we're not separating the categories and showing motorized bikes or golf carts, I think it's much harder to interpret the data because we're not going to be able to show appropriate trends for these subcategories of vehicles, and we're going to reach some wrong conclusions from looking at the data analysis.
Sounds like it's only a matter of time where we're gonna start seeing that data.
Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because I know you're.
That's the point exactly, is we're missing data. And I'm sorry, it should not be a discussion between the TPO and law enforcement. It should be a forceful recommendation. Hey, Sheriff Ivy, your people need to make sure that when they do a crash report, that it designates whether it was a pedal bike or an electric bike, because that's going to help them.
Well, I'm sure that a law enforcement officer would put that information in the report. The question is how is it being reported out on? So Sarah, I don't know if you can.
So we use a database called Signal 4 Analytics, and our data is only as good as, one, what you're saying is whoever is writing up that report, then whoever's inputting that report, and also, honestly, the Signal 4 database is kind of outdated. Could use some sprucing up. So we're dependent on, kind of almost like a telephone game. 100%, we agree with, both you, Mr. Ruffle, and Mr. Fielding, that, we need to be focused on this data, and that's where, during my report that I mentioned, we need to do some sort of additional planning activities related to these micromobility devices such as these bikes and golf carts. Perhaps, Georgiana, when we do the legislative priorities, having something that discusses the need for better reporting, because until we get better reporting, we can't do a better job.
Yeah, Ginger, you had something to add?
I think on some of this equipment, that law enforcement would require extensive training because there's many electric bikes that you cannot tell they're electric. They're doing a very good job at hiding the battery and the motor mechanism. So, but also a bicycle that exceeds the speed of 20 miles an hour without pedaling is legal, but anything excess of that is not legal. So if they're pedaling, the maximum speed is 28 miles an hour, and any scooter that exceeds 20 miles an hour is also illegal, and that needs to be enforced.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, I think really, in my opinion, this probably starts at the statute level, where you have to be able to have a statute that the Sheriff Ivy and the officers can actually cite. It's been a little while since I've received a little yellow ticket, but I'm sure that is a state form. And it seems like once they have the statute in effect, it becomes a checkbox on the yellow form, which then you can say, oh, it's e-bike or it's a golf cart. And then all of a sudden it becomes to the point where you can then mine it out of the database. It's a roundabout way of getting there, but it sure seems to me like that would be the way to approach it. Just my opinion.
Anything else for Patty?
And that is what's being discussed at the statewide level.
Yeah, Peter, you had something to add?
I would be interested in a trend analysis. This is what I've seen is a one-year spot. Like accidents, motorcycles are 20% or something. In the last 5 years,
Well, this is the first one that we've done for Vision Zero for the annual report specifically. The graph that was up, that breakdown comparison.
This is just specifically for our annual report.
okay, well,
The state of the system report would have that.
Yeah,
But-
correct.
what I'm saying, it doesn't really mean too much to me. I'd like to know what the volume of traffic is on an annual basis for a period of time.
Right.
How many, and what are the changes in the traffic volume? So that you can look at the trends over a period of time. 20% is nothing if you don't, well.
Good morning.
20%,
Mr. Festus,
if you have
Yeah.
if you have the traffic volume of 1 million cars, and you have 20% crash on motorcycles on year one, on year two, if you have 20% on 2 million
your crash rate.
crash rate. So,
Yeah, that information's in our State of the System report. It's produced annually. And if you go on our website, we should have a good summary on there. And it
is that a 5-year, over 5 years?
Yes, it is an average rolling 5-year analysis. And we did that because of the fluctuation from year to year. You could have one roadway that has a very high crash rate, and then the next year it falls off, only because there was a major fatality or something. So we did switch to be consistent with the state, and it's a rolling 5-year average. And I can get that information for you if you'd like.
Well,
And we do present on that every year, and
Yeah,
this year it will
it'll
be
be
when-
September, October.
September, October. So we'll go into detail about that for the state of the system.
that would help you, Ginger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Patty. Next, we're going to move into our report section of the agenda. First is the FDOT. Morning, Chuck.
Morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. Chuck Coppernoll with Florida Department of Transportation. First of all, Mr. Ruffalo, I want to say I appreciate you bringing up the e-bikes in relation to motorcycles, because that kind of segues into my first slide, because this is Motorcycle Awareness Month this month. So it's important that we always stay alert and remember that we have to share the road responsibly. And since Florida provides year-round favorable conditions, motorcycles are a constant present on our road. And of course, the discussion we just had now, we have to also look out for these e-bikes that are going very fast. I mean, I know I have personal experiences myself. Sometimes wonder if they consider themselves pedestrians and don't have to pay attention to the signs. They blow right through the stop sign all the time. I see it. So anyway, I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Ruffle. But anyway, anybody who does ride, just remember to ride smart. So say no to drinking and riding. Make yourself more visible to motorists. Always wear your helmet when you ride. Ride in control in legal and personal limits, and train regularly and get endorsed. So there has been some events. April 21st to the 25th was also Work Zone Awareness Week, where the Florida Department of Transportation partnered with law enforcement at selected existing work zones to perform educational stops. So here you see we had a educational stop at State Road 405, and we had a Florida Highway Patrol officer on site, and he was handing out awareness bracelets along with information flyers that kind of resemble a traffic ticket. Yeah. Resembling two motorists in the work zone. So this is how they perform the educational stops. And I've been talking about the last couple meetings, but on April 30th, we had our inaugural transportation industry hiring event. And it was a very successful event. I was a part of it as a navigator. And we were able to hire 10 new employees at the FDOT right there on the spot. And along with our recruiting partners, basically the consultants and contractors that work with FDOT were also on site to advertise what the positions they had available and also talk to prospective applicants. And it was a really good event. So look forward to the next one. And then finally, Friday is our second annual Safety Summit. It's going to be taking place at the Daytona Speedway. We are expecting a full house since the tickets were sold out last week. Here you see some highlights from last year's summit. For those of you who attended last year, you're aware of how impactful that summit was. So for those of you who are attending for the first time this week, I'm confident that you will experience the same. So Mr. Chair, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chuck. Any questions for Chuck? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ginger, you
covered it.
You'll talk to me later?
Yep, you're on the bad list.
Next up, Space Coast Area Transit.
None. None.
That's a problem. Big problem.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Just a few items. First would be our fixed ridership. Our most recent monthly ridership saw an increase of 6.95% over the same month last year, and year-to-date ridership has increased 5.36%. We have new buses. We took delivery of 5 new paratransit buses, and we have ordered 3 fixed route Gillig buses, 2 35-foot and 1 40-foot bus. We are continuing collaboration with Space Coast TPO toward the completion of the Mobility on Demand study, and we are working toward the installation of new semi-seat style bus benches at various transit stops throughout the county. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, Jim. On the Mobility on Demand, have you all picked a pilot zone yet? I think 2 months ago that was on the list of things for you to do. I don't know if it's best for you or Laura.
Well, I can answer no, we have not yet.
No, not yet? Okay, great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Adam.
I have a question.
Yes.
One of the things I've been doing my name's Kohler. One of the things I've been doing for the last 5 years in Brevard County, North Brevard County, is picking up trash once a month for an hour and a half. And the number of people that are participating in this endeavor has increased dramatically in the last 2 months. One of the things that we've discovered is that the bus stops have little garbage cans.
Right.
Who's responsible for picking up the trash, and how often do those trash cans, I know you probably don't have the answer right now, and how often are those trash cans picked up?
No, I don't have the answer right now. I do know that we contract with some agencies to do the pickup for the Brevard County stops. But yeah, I'll get back to you on that one.
No rush. Just
All
wanted
right.
to bring that up today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the public engagement report. Good morning, Abby.
Good morning. Let me get situated here. Down, but good morning. My name is Abby Hemingway. I'm the Public Information Officer and Outreach Manager for the Space Coast TPO, and I'm going to be reporting on our public involvement team's efforts for the past few months since we haven't seen you in a while. And so before we get started to kind of talk about what's upcoming for May and June, just some brief highlights. So some traffic safety partnerships that we had. In March, our team attended the FDOT Central Florida's Community Traffic Safety Team Summit. So we have a local community traffic safety team here in Brevard. And so we went and met with others across the region and talked about different ways to make our roadways safer, whether that was through engineering efforts, education, enforcement. And it was a really great summit to be a part of, to see what other districts are doing, and also, what we have unique here on the Space Coast. Later that same week, we also partnered with the Titusville Fire Department and Titusville Police Department in teaching students essential bike safety skills out at St. Teresa's Catholic School in Titusville there. We talked about the importance of power pedaling, stopping safely at stop signs, looking left, right, left, and also how to avoid hazards. So always great when we can get out there and reach those school-age children. And then lastly, the TPO participated in FDOT's Central Florida Safety Strategic Plan Steering Committee meeting. I know you heard a little bit about that this morning. And so we had some really great takeaways from some of the focus group reports, talking about data-driven decision-making, expanding our community education across our region, and then really enhancing collaboration, which goes back to what one of our emphasis areas is for our governing board. And the TPO also was afforded the opportunity to present a project showcase, our media relations best practices, which had highlighted last year's successful transportation safety series with Florida Today. And then I wanted to add this slide because I want to start kind of giving credit where credit is due out in the community. It takes a village when it comes to traffic safety. And so just wanted to draw some attention to what some of our law enforcement agencies have been doing. They do amazing things. This is just a snapshot. So up in the upper left corner in Titusville, the police department and I Go Now Roadside, which is a towing company who is very focused on the move over law. We've partnered with them before. They got together and staged a damaged vehicle at Titusville High to really underscore the importance of driving sober, especially it was a lead up during prom week. So I think having that on campus was a very, a great way to make sure that the students understand the dangers of drunk driving. And then the upper right-hand corner, Cocoa PD recently took advantage of the high visibility enforcement through FDOT to do some bicycle and pedestrian safety education. Below that, Satellite Beach Police stepped up their education efforts during Florida Bicycle Month by sharing some bike safety information. Down in the middle there, that's Palm Bay PD. They hosted a bike safety rodeo for school-age kids. They have some bike unit officers now, which is pretty cool. And then lastly, this is West Melbourne here in the bottom left, West Melbourne PD. They went all out for Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. Many of our law enforcement agencies did, so kudos to them. So just wanted to kind of share some of these shout outs across our county. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
I just wanted to point out, there's a little statement there, Kohler, e-bike riders must follow the same Florida laws as traditional bicycle riders.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So talking about Vision Zero, I know we just had the annual report, and so, we're shifting now from adopting the mission of Vision Zero, and what does it really look like in action, whether that's through infrastructure or messaging or what have you. So wanted to spotlight this specific campaign that we've been working on, as a courtesy to our FDOT D5 partners. We created a PHB campaign for the city of Cocoa and Cocoa PD to share out on their platforms in advance, because we have 6 new pedestrian hybrid beacons that have gone live out there on Clear Lake Road. So they've seen the construction for a very long time, and now we're shifting into, these, the infrastructure being put into place and going live. So we knew that this would be an important message. We were also able to reach out to the schools in the local area, share tip cards, and also Eastern Florida State College, which is right on that corridor. They were able to push it out to their employees. So really excited about this, and we're going to continue to support our municipalities when they have new infrastructure like this, so we can keep the education ongoing. Moving on, now that we have our community engagement coordinator on board, Leah has been creating some awesome safety campaigns to push out on our platforms. This is just a snapshot of some of the things that we tried to cover in April. And so I'll just encourage you, as our advocates for our TAC and CAC, please continue to share our messaging. We cannot do it alone. Our law enforcement can't be the only partner that shares out our things. So the more that you share our messages, the larger reach that we have across Brevard County. Moving on to May, we have some upcoming events and happenings. So May is everything month, but our real focus is National Bike Month. And so this is a time to celebrate the many benefits of bicycling. And, we talk about it as an additional source of transportation. So we're going to be sharing some fun ideas on our social media channels, attending events during May, and then even challenging our own staff to get engaged with bicycling activities. And this is put on by the League of American Bicyclists. They do a fantastic job of providing the resources. And then later this week, we're going to be celebrating Bike and Roll to School Day. This is an annual event that we put on with Brevard Public Schools. It's a national event that we recognize. And so many of our schools host community events where they kind of pick a location and they might roll together to school. So Leah and I will kind of be dividing and conquering that morning and going out to two different schools, West Side Elementary in Palm Bay and Apollo Elementary in Titusville. We also plan to go out to Roosevelt Elementary later in the afternoon. They're being recognized by FDOT. Some of their students won bike symbol art contests, and that's, if you remember, if you've been here for a while, essentially a contest put on by FDOT where kids get to design their own bike lane symbol with some, parameters. And then if they're selected, they actually get installed on the roadway, which is really cool. So we're excited to go out and support that. Here's just a snapshot of some upcoming events that we have. Of special note that I just wanted to call out, I didn't have it ready for this just yet, but we did secure a date for our Helmet Fit certification class. We haven't held one in a while. It will be taking place on Wednesday, May 14th from 2 to 4:30. It's actually, we sent out a Get Involved Gazette this morning. It should be in your email, so all of this will be in there as well. It's going to be at the Rockledge Public Safety Community Room, and this is where if you or your staff wants to get trained in how to fit helmets properly, you can order free state resources and free helmets to distribute at events. So it's a fantastic program. Many of our law enforcement agencies take a part of it, but then it's great to have community partners as well. And then just to kind of close us out, here are a few more topics. I know that Chuck already highlighted Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, but this is a campaign that our team created because we have seen a large uptick in Brevard County. Specifically, we've had 5 fatalities just this year alone that were motorcyclists. So we're trying to draw some attention to it and share it out with our partners. So once again, just encouraging you all to share that messaging as these items kind of come up. And last but not least, you have a flyer at your seat. Our open house, it's this time of year. Annually, we host this event. Every year looks a little different depending on what's going on for our organization. This year's theme is investing in tomorrow's transportation together. So we're going to be talking, of course, a lot about the list of project priorities and the transportation improvement program, but also having some hands-on activities for our attendees as well. It's going to be in the evening here at the Center for Collaboration. On your flyer, there's a QR code that you can go ahead and register. And so we just encourage you to be there. That's all I have.
Thanks, Abby. Go ahead, Harry.
My only question is this, I'm all for bike safety and everything else. I'm a pedestrian, and one of the biggest failings that I see, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but is there not a statute in the state of Florida that requires bicyclists to give an audible warning to pedestrians that they're approaching from the rear? And when is that ever discussed in these bike week safety programs and things like that? Because I'll be honest with you, I walk near the Roosevelt High School, elementary school and things like that, and not a single one of those kids comes screaming by on their e-bikes and their regular bicycles, and I'm not wearing headphones or anything, and I have very good hearing, and I don't get any kind of warning. It's
Yeah, I can just speak for the Space Coast TPO. When it comes to our messaging, we're advocating like National Bike Month, we're sharing activities, but we also have educational posts that say you must obey all, in the state of Florida, they're acting as a vehicle. So we underscore that part too. There are both sides to it. So I can only speak for our messaging. We still make sure that we're sneaking in things like they're about making sure that they're obeying the laws, and audible signals are very important, a part of that, especially on a multi-use path. Hand signals are still, people have gotten out of the use of hand signals as well. So I can only speak for our messaging. We do put that into our educational messaging when it comes to bicycle and pedestrian safety, making sure that everyone has a part to play on our roadway, and it takes all of us.
So
Yeah, Greg?
Yeah, Abby, you mentioned about the free helmets, and I really wanted to give a shout out to our partners at FDOT. for any event you do or may be involved with. Personally, I have gone up to FDOT. They've pointed me to a store which turns out to be over at IFAS and
The Ped Bike Resource
UF
Center.
for resources, and I've gotten everything from pass out jump drives to rail crossing safety information, which I can package up and give out to events. So I really do want to give a shout out to our partners at FDOT.
Yep. And that's the Ped Bike Resource Center. When you become a community partner, you can order those materials. It's an incredible, great center.
Can I second that with your support and the literature from you guys?
Yes.
For the scout troop that was in Vieira for March 31st that we supported.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
I just wanted to mention, yes, so we have gotten so many materials from that resource center, including, is that where we normally get the little flashing lights for bicycles in the past?
So the lights are a little different. Typically, we've had those from FDOT D5 if they have left over from Mobility Week. But as far as ordering them from the Resource Center, it's actually only allowed for law enforcement now.
I see.
And it is a material that you have to collect signatures and things like that.
Well,
just
I
through the
was
grant.
wondering, I've not seen the little bells, to your point, I wonder, if that's something we could check into.
Yeah,
or,
absolutely. That's an item on there. We can definitely see if there's any availability maybe on our next order.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Sounds good.
I know you can get train whistles.
Okay, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Next up is,
Cliff,
yes?
I'm so sorry. One last thing.
Yep. Oh,
I just, for any potential community events coming up, we don't know about them unless you share. So I just encourage you, if you have community events coming up, please introduce yourself to Leah, our community engagement coordinator. We're looking for events to come out and support. So please make yourself known. Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you, Abby. Next up is a public comment, and this would be for non-agenda items only. Is there any public comment on any non-agenda items? Okay. Actually, I missed the local government report. We'll go back to that. Is there anyone that would like to report on any local government? Go ahead, Bob.
Two quick things. Georgiana, look forward to meeting with you, I think, on Wednesday afternoon. And I wanted to do my annual shout out to Mr. Cliff for an awesome corporate 5K on April 10th. 2,100 people, I believe.
We survived.
And just a phenomenal group between your group at the airport and Running Zone. Just did an amazing job. And the fact that we were running on right next to an active runway during the race, and there must have been 5 or 6 small planes that took off during that. I would let you know that the port team came in 20th fastest.
Okay.
The airport team came in 24th, but you were in your top 4. I was not in our top 4 in our team, but we had a great time, and it's just a great event that we've participated in 5 years, and you guys just do an awesome job with it.
Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it. All the proceeds from that event benefit the Eau Gallie High School aviation program, which is really unique. It's the only program like it in the state, and it's really gets kids interested in aviation and aerospace, which certainly in our area is a big deal, but we're something we're real proud of. So thanks.
I will say that Laura and Madeline participated representing the Space Coast TPO.
Awesome. Thank you.
Unfortunately, was too lazy. That's right.
You usually do have a team, yeah.
We will. We're going to be prepared next year.
Awesome. Any other local government news? Okay. Anything else to be come before this committee, these committees?
No meeting in June, so we'll
Yep.
see everyone in July.
Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.